Is this affordable Viltrox monitor really that affordable when you consider the build quality, the features, and whether or not it will actually make a difference to your video shoots? Well, today I'm going to attempt to answer those questions, as well as whether I'd buy this monitor over a more expensive Atomos monitor. So for a bit of background, Viltrox is a company that I've used before and I've been pretty happy with. I've used one of their LED tubes for a couple of years now and it's been really good. So when they offered to send me the monitor, I was happy to take it for a review. And just so you know, this is a fully unpaid and honest review of the monitor. So this is the DC-550 Lite, which is the cheapest model of a lineup of 3 different monitors. They've got the Lite, they've got the regular version, and then they've got a Pro model. And you can pick the Lite version up for about $120 US. So first of all, let's just take a bit of a look at the monitor itself, discuss the features and the build quality, and then I'll come back to a few ways that it might change how you film and whether or not I buy it over an Atomos. All right, so here is the Viltrox DC-550 Lite. And overall, let's just start off by talking about the build quality. I actually find the build quality of this monitor to be really good. It's made of plastic, but the plastic definitely feels like high quality plastic. It doesn't feel like cheap plastic. All the buttons and everything feel very sturdy and solid. Now it's worth noting that in this Lite version, there's no inbuilt fan, whereas in the other 2 models, there's inbuilt fans. Now I definitely haven't experienced any overheating issues or anything like that, but it does definitely get warm when you've been using it for a little while. And I've seen other people comment on the color of the battery being white compared to the rest of the monitor being sort of gray and black. And I don't know, what do you guys think? I actually kind of like it. I kind of like the contrast. And one of the cool things I do like about this battery is it's got a battery indicator on the inside so you can tell whether or not it's charged. And it's also got a USB port to discharge the battery directly with the USB, which I think is definitely a nice touch. And I found the battery life to be solid. When I was out on a location shoot with this, it lasted me probably 2.5, maybe 3 hours. And then it didn't feel like it took too long to charge up, maybe an hour or something like that. So overall, it's definitely a decent battery. On the bottom of the monitor, you've got HDMI out, HDMI in, 1/4 inch, and then a headphone out jack. On the side, you've got your main control knob, which if you press it, opens up the menu, and then you can just navigate using the dial on-off switch. Then on the side, we've got a 12-volt DC in, which is handy if you want to use external power and not have to rely on the battery. It's also got a 5-volt in and then another 1/4 inch mounting point. And then moving to the top, we've got 3 different function keys which are programmable, and then here you've got an SD card slot, and this is basically for loading up your LUTs and doing any firmware updates that you might want to do. And one thing worth noting about this SD card slot is it doesn't take high capacity cards. Luckily I had this 16 megabyte memory card lying around from years ago and I was able to put my LUT file onto this. If you do have a high capacity SD card, you probably won't be able to use it in this monitor. I think the max capacity was around 32 gigabytes this could take. Worth noting if you're going to load up your own LUTs, but it is at least a nice touch that you can load custom LUTs. I think for me, there's kind of only 2 main complaints with the build of this particular monitor. The first is the cold shoe mount that comes with it in the package. This is probably the only part that I found feels a little bit on the cheap side, and also this knob on the side is just pretty big. Like it'd be nice if it was just a bit smaller, but it doesn't feel like it's going to break or like I'm going to have any issues with it, but that's easy to replace, so it's not a big deal. And then the other thing was just this big side knob on the side of the screen. To be honest, I just found that I just never use it because the touch screen on this monitor is really nice and responsive. I just found this really unnecessary, especially considering the size of it. Like it's a huge knob. I think most people would just be happy to use the touch screen considering it's very responsive, but again, not a huge deal at all. So let's just plug this monitor into my other camera and then we can talk about the actual screen itself. Now this is a 400 nit touchscreen that comes in full HD and it's 5.5 inches in size. And like I already mentioned, I find the touchscreen actually really good. It's very responsive. You can adjust the backlight brightness just by swiping up and down, and then your volume control on the left side. And for me, it's got all the monitoring controls that I would probably ever need. So you just double tap to open the menus, and you've got 4 different pages of menus up the top here. So the first one is your waveforms. So that includes things like your volume meter, histograms, vectors, features, parades, all that kind of thing. And they're all really decent. They definitely give you all the information that you'd ever need for this kind of thing. It's even got a full waveform page, so you can see a bit of everything that's going on. The second page is your monitoring tools. And this is kind of the main features that I use the most. So the first one is your focus peaking, and that just enables you to see whether or not you're in focus. So you can easily adjust the intensity of your focus peaking and the color. Then you've got false color, which I'm also a big believer in, a big fan of. That really can help you nail your exposure. You've got your zebras, so you can see whether or not you're overexposed or underexposed. Under and over scanning, you can flip your image horizontal and vertical, which again, I find very useful filming myself. It does also have the ability to automatically change rotation depending on how you're holding the screen. So that could be handy depending on how you're using your camera. It's also got a freeze frame feature if you want to reframe stuff. And moving on to the next page, you've got all of your markers and composition settings. So here you can add your safe zones. You've also got rule of thirds, which I always like using. Then you've got aspect ratio overlays, which could be really handy. And then it's also got a aspect ratio zoom ability, depending on the type of feed that you're shooting with, the ability to zoom in and out from your image. And then it's got an anamorphic de-squeeze feature. And then lastly, we've got the image settings, which I actually found really useful because out of the box, the colors on this screen definitely weren't matching my camera monitor, but it was actually really easy to tweak things like the saturation, the hue, color temperature, things like that, just to get it to match up to my camera monitor really nicely so it looks exactly the same. Up in the top right, we've got your general settings, so you can change things like language, volume, menu, and this is also where you can program your function keys. So for me, I've got my function 1 key set to peaking, got the second set to false color, and then I've got the third key set to a parade. This is definitely something I would look for in any monitor, is programmable function keys, because this just makes it so much easier when you're shooting on the fly to be able to turn on and off particular settings that you really want to see or you use regularly. And as you can see, I mean, the image on this screen looks really nice. The brightness is good. I used it outdoors without any problems, which leads me to the last feature that this monitor includes, which is a sun hood. Now, I'm actually personally quite a big fan of this sun hood, and I'll show you why. So all you have to do is just clip it on like so. And then if you want to open it, just open this little hatch and it will literally just flip open like that, and it's good to go. I've used other cheap monitors that attach with Velcro. They're just nowhere near as good as something like this. If you want to close it, it's literally just a matter of pushing in the sides, closing it, and it clips shut. You're good to go. Your screen's protected, just perfect for using it outdoors. So that's definitely a big win for Viltrox. So as you can see, overall, I actually really think it's a really well-built monitor. It's got lots of good features that you definitely be able to make use of, but will it actually change how you film? Will it help you film? And is it actually worth buying? Now, from my point of view, it actually does change how I film, and there's kind of three main reasons for this. The first is really exposure. Now, typically when it comes to exposing correctly, especially when you're shooting on S-Log or any RAW format, it can be a little bit tricky to get correct every time, especially if you're just eyeballing it on your little monitor. But using an external monitor that supports false color enables you to make sure you got your exposure correct every single time. Because all you have to do is look for the right colors once you've got false color applied, and you know you're guaranteed to have the right exposure. The second way it's really changed how I film is it's enabled me to get better at framing and making sure I'm actually in focus. And that's pretty much just down to having a larger screen. So that extra screen size really helps you see exactly what you're shooting. And the other big thing is focus. The amount of times I've filmed entire YouTube videos and brought it back onto my computer, and I've realized the entire time I was out of focus and I just couldn't see it on my little monitor. It's driven me crazy. So being able to have a full-size monitor on top of my camera has been a huge game changer, because I know for sure I can see on the screen really clearly whether I'm in focus or out of focus. And then lastly, I actually think having a video monitor on top of your camera can help stabilize your footage. And the reason this is because having a monitor does add extra weight to your camera, and therefore it bulks up your overall rig, and that just helps stabilize your camera, especially if you're shooting a lot of handheld. So that's definitely another big bonus. So lastly, would I buy it over at Atomos, and would I recommend it? And the answer is yes, I think I would, depending of course on who you are and what your use case is. At the time of this video, the cheapest Atomos Shinobi monitor is about $300 US, so it's about 150 to 180 extra US dollars over the Viltrox. And to be honest, you're pretty much getting the same features when it comes to overlays, markers, false color, stuff like that. Now, of course, the quality with the Atomos will be a bit better, but again, this is not bad quality. The Viltrox is not bad quality at all. And I'd be more than happy to pay less than half the price for a monitor that's comparable. Never had any problems with overheating, never had any glitches or real issues. I'd say if you're looking for your first external monitor, but you don't want to go really cheap, but you also don't want to go really expensive, I reckon the Viltrox is a really good sort of middle ground. I think if you get it, honestly, I think you'll be really happy. Now, if you get a monitor and you want to start using false color, it can be a little bit tricky to get your head around it. So make sure you watch this video here where I teach you how to use false color to expose correctly. Other than that, I hope you have an amazing day and I'll see you very soon in the next video.